1989, Capcom was but a relative newcomer to the video game industry. The company had released several PC and arcade games, but didn't really explode until 1987, when it developed and published the first Street Fighter game. With Destiny of an Emperor in 1989, however, Capcom went in a totally different direction. Building upon the success of Dragon Warrior and Final Fantasy, it created a strategic role-playing game based on legendary figures from ancient China. The game was based upon the events from the classic Chinese work Romance of the Three Kingdoms, or Sanguo Yan Yi, which is considered one of the 4 great classic Chinese novels. The chief protagonist of the game is Liu Bei, a direct descendant of the Han Dynasty. Determined to maintain peace and order in the dynasty, Liu Bei calls together 2 other friends, the famous warriors Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, to defeat an insurrection called the Yellow Turban Rebellion. Having read Romance of the Three Kingdoms, I can tell you that the game does faithfully try to follow some of the pivotal events from the saga, but it does tilt the events in favor of Liu Bei and the Shu Han Kingdom. On the surface, the game has the look and feel of a Dragon Warrior game. There's scrolling text, menu options to talk, shops in which to buy items, and a loose story to follow. Even the graphics look quite a bit similar to the Dragon Warrior games. What really sets Destiny of an Emperor apart from other role-playing games on the system is the combat. Diverging from both the Dragon Warrior and Final Fantasy games, battles in Destiny of an Emperor take place on a screen in which you are commanding huge armies, each headed by a great general. It's best to consider the battle command as the fight command from other RPGs. The battle animation shows as a single strike against an enemy general, but a successful attack depletes enemy forces rather than hit points. In the same way, each of your generals has a set number of soldiers that grow when you level up, and you can have up to 5 main generals in your party at one time. Tactics takes the place of magic, where a strategist assigned to your group can use special abilities that do various things in combat, such as destroy enemy forces or restore your own. The tactics available can be used by any party member in battle, but its success rate is determined by each character's intelligence stat. Some tactics are specific to certain tacticians, and others are gained only when leveling up. The combat command that's completely unique to Destiny of an Emperor is the All Out mode. Selecting this command quickly streamlines the result of the battles, but it does not use tactics and instead utilizes computer-generated attacks that may or may not yield the most advantageous behavior for the situation in question. This option helps save time by preventing continuous, lengthy battles that often take place throughout the game. The report command allows you to view the strengths and weaknesses of the enemy's generals, which can help plan your approach to each battle. The player is also responsible for providing adequate food to supply his armies, and if you don't have enough, your forces will die off. Thankfully, the game allows you to mitigate some of the pain of random battles by recruiting enemy generals. This removes them from wandering around certain areas and alleviates the annoyance of constant battles. In addition to the generals, Rebel Force, Bandit Force, and Brigand Force enemies are also encountered throughout the game. Unlike the generals though, they're generic and don't have the same power and difficulty level. Battles against these forces are usually extremely quick and easy in comparison. Destiny of an Emperor's story is fun, easy to follow, and based on legendary events from China's past. The game even begins with a disclaimer noting that the characteristics of the 180 warlords in the game were taken from documentation, mostly from the Romance of the Three Kingdoms novel, which itself was loosely based on events from 2nd and 3rd century China. Among the themes explored in the game, just like in the novel, are friendship, loyalty, and trickery. Generals create alliances to defect and follow other generals, all while the Shu Han under Liu Bei tries to establish order and unify China under a single dynasty. The general story is pretty simplistic, but there's a lot of content here for an 8-bit RPG. Liu Bei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei meet in the beginning of the game, vowing to die in the same hour of the same day of the same year, together. In the books, this is called the Oath of the Peach Garden, and this commitment to camaraderie underscores a significant part of Romance of the Three Kingdoms, just as in the game. Destiny of an Emperor does an incredible job at inserting famous figures from the time, such as Zhuge Liang, the most legendary Chinese strategist, and Lu Bu, the fiercest warrior on the planet. Cao Cao, who's also portrayed as an antagonist in the novel, is also in the game. Even Sima Yi, who eventually destroyed Liu Bei's kingdom in actual history, is here as the final boss. I thought the music in the game was catchy and memorable and doesn't sound very similar to the Final Fantasy or Dragon Warrior games. Even though the music is 8-bit, it does take influence from classic Chinese music, which can be heard from the title screen onward. The castle, fortress, and battle themes are all great, and there's enough variety here so that the same music isn't constantly looping all the time like some of the other games from the era. For as many elements as Destiny of an Emperor borrowed from other games, I think the music does set it apart and make it unique, in an effective way. The difficulty level of Destiny of an Emperor is quite high, though not absurdly so. I think it's a bit more difficult than the original Dragon Warrior, and about the same as Final Fantasy. There are strategic elements to the battles, especially the boss battles, which provide a continual challenge. Also, the average time to complete the game is about 30 hours, which was quite a bit more than many of the other games on the system at the time. The rate of random encounters in the game is excessive and can definitely be overbearing at times. This can be lessened to an extent by recruiting wandering generals to make battles easier, but the rate of encounters is still very high, even in comparison to Dragon Warrior and Final Fantasy. The dungeon layout is very basic, but that's to be expected from a game from this era. Inventory management is a real pain because each character only has limited space for items. Buying, selling, equipping, and exchanging items between characters is definitely excruciating, but it's not unlike the Dragon Warrior games. This system hasn't aged very well though and could cause some discouragement among players that tackle the game today. There are two elements of the game I think are noteworthy for providing nostalgia for old gamers. Number one is, encounters with generals often trigger a small scene in which the opposing general berates Liu Bei and his forces. I like to refer to these occurrences as trash talk segments, and they're kind of funny. Secondly, you also get pep talks throughout the game, especially after you complete certain segments, from Liu Bei and other characters in the palace. A lot of the dialogue's over the top, but it's definitely humorous. There's lots of unintentionally funny comments in the game, and I promise you'll laugh at it. Overall, I do think Destiny of an Emperor holds up pretty well, and is definitely one of my favorite games on the original Nintendo. My few gripes with the game are minor, and it still brings back a lot of memories and nostalgia, and makes me want to play it again from time to time today. And that'll do it for my retrospective and review. If you like this video, please comment on it, subscribe, and check out my other videos.